Hello and welcome back to our special series, Getting Ahead of the Great Wealth Transfer on You and Your Money. Today we're going to talk about women and wealth because the majority of this $84 trillion wealth transfer is set to be inherited by women.
I'm Jim Zahansky, Senior Partner and Chief Strategist at WHZ Strategic Wealth Advisors.
I'm Lysel Langevin, Managing Partner Advisory at WHC.
I'm Lawrence Hale, Senior Partner and Chief Investment Officer at WHC.
And I'm Attorney Allison Poirier, Partner at KKC Law.
Welcome. Together, we'll take you through everything you need to know about the Great Wealth Transfer and how to prepare. So let's get into it.
In this episode, we're focusing on one of the most significant but lesser discussed components of generational wealth, the large transfer of wealth to women that is set to her. Women are becoming central to how wealth is held, transferred, and stewarded. Let's explore how and why.
Yeah, and I think this is such an important topic because I've definitely seen a shift since I started practicing 12 years ago in terms of women's involvement in the financial and estate planning aspect of things. They're definitely being more involved, taking charge, even being the primary person to initiate these discussions.
Yeah, and we've seen that same thing on the financial planning side as well. More and more women are becoming the ones that are making the decisions. Actually, there's a survey out there that was conducted by the CFP board, and it found that 60% of women identified themselves as the main financial decision makers in their households. So that's excellent news. I mean, we have to consider how much wealth that women would inherit and maybe how they would inherit that wealth over these next couple of decades. But really, regardless of gender, anyone who's set to inherit really needs to be confident in managing those finances. And so they need to get prepared to manage this inheritance and these transitions.
You know, Lysel, that's so true. And, there's a lot of these trends that are converging and they have some real planning implications. Women tend to live longer lives. Which means that often they outsurvive their spouses, and they may inherit the estate on their own and as a widow or and before passing that on to the next generation. So at the same time, women are increasingly the primary earners, business executives or wealth owners in their own right, and that's something that has some significant planning implications.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt we've seen at WHZ a paradigm shift in inclusion of the female partner in the decision making in financial planning, from investments to philanthropy to values, and it's playing out in a lot of ways which are really useful in this paradigm shift because women are offering different perspectives and sometimes have different priorities, right? Like as Lawrence said, they usually win the longevity game, so they may have different ideas and values to be executed. They also seem to care quite a bit more about healthcare planning and long-term care planning and being sure they have the right either legal strategy or financial strategy for that. They care a lot about family relationships, giving, and usually legacy, and these are really good perspectives that bring this paradigm shift to having women as decision makers in meetings with WHC.
Yeah, and actually I even had a really interesting conversation with a woman who had come into my office the other day without her husband because she said he doesn't want to talk about this stuff, but I do. So it was, again, kind of a very big shift away from that kind of traditional paradigm that most people think of, with the I Love Lucy era where it's the husband's in charge and makes the decisions. But I mean, women are becoming more and more involved in leading these discussions and taking charge in terms of the planning. And also a shift away from, there's a lot of very successful women out there who aren't married and who don't have kids. So it's not as simple as I need a plan to make sure everything passes to the next generation. It's I want to make sure the assets go to the charities I like to support, to other friends and family members that I'm very close to. So it's a really big change to that more kind of traditional planning that people tend to think of.
Yeah, certainly. And I would say, too, to that point about having a woman show up and saying, oh, my husband's not interested in making these decisions, I think that's a very interesting shift. And it means that a lot of women are probably going to have a say in who is going to inherit in the next generation. So in mixed families or blended families, there might be some feelings one way or another. And if the woman is driving that conversation, and in this example, the husband didn't have much to say about it. So it's sort of an interesting shift there, but just making sure that the female, if they're female heirs, that they're ready to receive that inheritance, and that they're ready to play in those roles if they have to be an executor or they have to manage finances before they're actually passed to the next generation. So,
I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that, the idea of this paradigm shift we're talking about, where women are much more involved and possibly, co-decision makers at the least, but, hopefully more than that, it requires financial planners and estate planners to adapt. The idea that the woman being included and at least a co-decision maker with their partner and or the decision maker really requires us as financial planners, as legal planners, as estate planners, to be sure that our processes, our training, and our tools and models can adapt, right? Because women are bringing to the table, the idea of the importance of legacy. They may be living longer. And to do that, tools need to adapt to be sure we're considering, at least from the financial planning point of view, what are the levels of investment risk someone should take in both sort of the decumulation phase and the accumulation phase. How much risk should they be taking as they live longer is only one example of a tool adaptation that needs to happen to be sure that we can adapt as planners to the needs of women.
Yeah, and it's, Jim, it's so important. And I think, some of this is generational, and a lot of this is driven by data that we've looked at around how women are different decision makers than their male counterparts often. There's also a lot of complexity where in a financial plan, particularly when you have things like a closely owned business or something like that, if a spouse, based on longevity, most often the female spouse inherits a business, do they want to continue that business? Are they able to continue that business, or what plans do they have? And how does that succession planning, the valuation and transition planning come to fruition, particularly since they would want to consult with whoever the current leaders of that organization are, that often their spouse.
So, and again, too, just solely from the standpoint that women do have more longevity, statistically speaking, than men, it's women serving more in these fiduciary roles too. So it's serving as the powers of attorney, serving as the executors and the trustees. So really making sure they're involved in that process. They understand what those roles entail. And also in thinking about appointing who those fiduciaries are in your plan. Maybe there is something to be said for appointing a sister versus a brother, or again, a daughter versus a son, those types of things. So we just help, we have those discussions with clients, we have those talks, because it's no longer just kind of the person who's, the oldest male relative, or who's, even just the oldest child with the oldest brother, or whoever lives closest to you. Those things aren't necessarily the deciding factor anymore. Women more and more, again, are living longer, becoming more successful, are more engaged in these family discussions, and become the more appropriate choice.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the final consideration is that families, they need to talk about the style of wealth use as well. And women are more often focusing on what the impact of what money can do. And so how can it help the community? How can it help the family, rather than just how much wealth is coming our way? And so that will influence investment style planning, whether there are charitable initiatives that are set forth by the family. And so those are some really key things to consider, because it's not just about what's coming, it's what can it do for our family and our community.
Statistically, women are going to be more and more the decision makers on family wealth. There's often an emphasis on more collaboration and communication, and that's something that we listen to all of our clients deeply and want to understand their unique situation, goals, and needs. But particularly in working with many women, understanding how those values and interests and familiar needs make it into things like family meetings, getting the next generation involved, And all of these things are fantastic. They're going to lead to better outcomes for clients. At WAC, we have helped many women, whether they've been inheriting assets from their spouse or come in as leaders of organizations or executives. As women are coming in and talking with us, whether they're inheriting assets or executives or have wealth of their own, building a legacy roadmap for them and understanding things such as their ideas around giving, family education, governance, different investment strategies. And it's really much more than just handing over assets. It's understanding how they can hand over their values at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think it just kind of comes down to women are having a more dynamic role and a more invested role in this planning. So having that conversation with them to fully understand what they want to see happen, how they want to see it happen, how do they want to see that plan implemented from a legal standpoint, and means those estate planning documents can become so much more important to really clearly articulate what the plan is and how it's to be carried out. So at KKC, I mean, we're always having those conversations with the clients and making sure we're really tailoring a plan that's very specific to make sure that what they want to see happen is what actually is going to occur. Also to just, and I know it's something we've harped on a little bit, but to maybe harp on it even some more with the longevity of women living longer, unfortunately doesn't always mean women are living healthier longer. So things like, yes, the wealth transfer, clearly what we're here to talk about today is super important, but to say, well, but also too, I need someone to step in and help me if I become incapacitated. So also thinking about the healthcare proxies, the powers of attorney, thinking about asset protection strategies. If I'm going to need long-term care, do I want that to be in the home? And more realistically, is it going to have to be in a skilled nursing facility based off of the health concerns that I have? So just having all those conversations and taking those considerations into account.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just some good takeaways here. But if you're a woman or you have a woman in your family, take this as a strategic opportunity to have a conversation with them and educate them, understand what the structure of investments or estates will look like, what your values are, and what your role will be in each of those. But if we sort of segue into what the tips and takeaways are, I mean, certainly Allison just touched on it with reviewing longevity assumptions. So in our with our financial plans, if you're retiring in your 60s, we have you living into your 90s. That's 30 years of potential time horizon that you need to plan for and make sure that you, and I was here, I'm not going to live that long. Well, how old were your parents when they passed? Okay, we're going to keep you at 93. So making sure that we're reviewing those assumptions, especially with women, and then engaging that next generation female heir early. You want to educate, mentor, have a conversation with them around finances, get them hearing the terms that are used in finance and getting familiar with what they mean. And then third, designing estate documents for multiple generations with clarity around roles and making sure that everybody understands what their roles are beyond just the executor, the healthcare proxy, and power of attorney, making sure that they understand where the documents are, where the accounts are. So those are all really important as well. And then lastly, aligning investments, giving, and lifestyle with your values, and not just the focusing so much on the wealth accumulation, but what can your wealth do for you, for your family, for your community. So I think those are some key takeaways that we certainly focus on.
Yeah, Liza, I think that's just great advice, and maybe to carry it forward a little with some maybe to-dos or kind of takeaway actions of my own is you have the plan in place, and something I harped on before and I will harp on again until I have no more breath in my body. Continue to review the plan. Don't just set it once and never revisit. So as those females in your life maybe are taking a more advanced role in your plan, or you're the female and in the planning process, and just really thinking about what your goals are and how those shift over time, and making sure the plan is adjusted to reflect that. Consider your philanthropic plans, because maybe initially the plan 1 year is to do this, but next year you find a really great organization that you want to support, or you branch out and have other interests. So again, keep revisiting, keep adjusting the plan to take in those philanthropic goals as well. And always keeping the communication open. So plans are great, but not so great if nobody else knows when they are. So making sure the next people online that are going to be stepping in to help know what the plan is, know where the documents are, know who your advisors are, is just so helpful.
Excellent. Well, that wraps things up from this amazing conversation, Allison, Lawrence, Lizel, and I. I mean, it's no doubt women in wealth inheritance are making a big impact, and we can't wait to do more. So, that wraps this episode for sure. And the next time we'll be together is how we turn the great wealth transfer into a lasting legacy, where we combine planning, investing, values, family, and governance to be sure that we can help generations to come. So remember that our free guide, Smart Strategies for Generational Wealth, which can be downloaded at our website, whcwealth.com or kkc-law.com, is there to help you plan well, invest well, live well, provide absolute confidence, unwavering partnership for life.
So be sure to join us once again for that episode 2 weeks from today. And in the meantime, get our free guide, Smart Strategies for Creating Generational Wealth. You can download it at whcwealth.com or at kkc-law.com. It has details about everything we talked about today and a ton more information to help you preserve and grow generational wealth. We'll see you soon for the next installment of Getting Ahead of the Great Wealth Transfer on the You and Your Money podcast. Watch and subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform.